Alright, I was just playing around with a few future deck builds and started thinking about the game itself and jotted down a few ideas on how I think the player experience could be improved. Note that these are my own opinions. Clearly, others might have differing opinions, and while I certainly did not steal any of these ideas from anyone else, it would shock me if no one else has independently thought of them at some point in time as well. So I will certainly not make the proclamation that these ideas are anywhere, any shape and form unique. In addition, you can treat this post kind of like a podcast of sorts because I'm just going to have a black screen accompany my voice. Some like to put duels over discussion videos like this, but I kind of feel that's too distracting. Anyways, what are my 5 ideas or requests to make the game better? Number 5, there are certainly missed opportunities for creativity and profit from Konami in retaining most of the design exclusivity for Yu-Gi-Oh! Playmats. While some mats are certainly creative and valued, a number of mats are rather bland, leaving one to wonder why they were even produced in the first place. This issue can be resolved rather effectively if Konami simply invited artistically minded Yu-Gi-Oh! Players to design playmats in a competition to become official Yu-Gi-Oh! Playmat products. The results of these competitions would involve the winner receiving some percentage of the profits. I would say like 30% or 33% is a good starting point, obtained from any sales of the mats, as well as a box of their choice from any set. It would not be difficult to hold 2 or 3 of these competitions a year, where the voting could either involve in-house determination or some form of online voting or in-person tournament voting. It would be important to acknowledge that Konami would not retain any copyright or intellectual property rights on any of the mat submissions outside the winner, which would have that profit-sharing agreement. Overall, the introduction of such competitions should stir more interest in the game and produce a new avenue for individuals to enjoy another aspect of the game. Number 4, with each new ban list, a legacy card should be unbanned and returned to 1 to test whether or not it still has the same effect on the game as it did when it resulted in its banning. Basically, a legacy card is a card, in my opinion, that is currently banned and has been banned for at least 2 years. Excellent examples of this idea were the return of Snatch Steel or Regeki, where Snatch Steel was immediately rebanned on the next list, and Regeki remains unbanned, still limited to 1. To even spice up the policy, the card in question could be selected by the players in an official online poll from a field of 5 choices selected by Konami as cards that were worthy of having a chance to come back. No, I would say that this voting should not allow write-ins because there are some cards that really never should come back, like Disc Commander, Pot of Greed, Card of Safe Return, etc. Incidentally, my 5 nominees for such a vote would be Yatagarasu, Witch of the Black Forest, Metamorphosis, Pot of Avarice, and Fiber Jar. No, I'm actually kidding about the Fiber Jar one. I remember the horrors of Fiber Jar in the 40 plus minute first duel because of 4 Fiber Jar activations. Now, the 5th card would be something like Time Seal. Remember, this legacy issue should be about cards that could still be too powerful to come off the list, not cards that a lot of people, there's almost a consensus that, yeah, these cards shouldn't be on the list anymore. Number 3. I'm sure most people have probably already suggested this one. This is by far and away the least unique of, I'm sure, of these 5 ideas. Konami needs to reinstate a fixed schedule for when a new ban list is released. Somewhat ironically, the new ban list every 3 months schedule was almost ideal, for it offered a long enough period of time for players to get a feel for the format, incorporate new cards either from the ban list or from new sets, and freely compete while providing a short enough time period for individuals who did not feel that the current format was to their liking and elected to play more casually versus competitively. In addition, the fixed ban list gave people a better idea on how to better manage the Yu-Gi-Oh! Marketplace in a sense. When cards would come down in value and could be picked up, when cards would go up in value and could be sold for more money. Talk to anyone in the business world, and the most important element is certainty, limiting unpredictability. With the change in releasing a ban list to whenever, Konami has actually hurt their bottom line. Why negatively impact their consumer and player base for this new policy? Reverting back to the older policy makes sense even when more immediate changes are required, for nothing should stop Konami from releasing a quote-unquote adjusted or emergency ban list when appropriate. It hasn't stopped them before. There really is no advantage to maintaining the current, newer ban list policy, as any improved flexibility is illusionary. Reverting back to a more certain time period for each ban list, i.e., creating a more distinguished and fixed format base, is one of the more painless things Konami can do to improve the game as it currently stands. Number 2. Clearly, the pendulum mechanic is an ongoing problem in the game, as seen in the need for the adjusted ban list to quell the rise of Pepe. Numerous people have had numerous ideas on how to address the pendulum mechanic as a whole, because it is difficult to envision controlling its power simply through the ban list alone. Basically, in some respects, the pendulum mechanic is a one-per-turn quasi-soul charge without the life point payment or the lack of a battle phase. In my opinion, one must develop a strategy that limits the power of the pendulum mechanic without significantly changing the mechanic itself. I have two ideas in this vein. First, limit the play potential for a given turn by instituting a rule in that during a turn when a player pendulum summons, that player can then only summon at most one monster from his or her extra deck until the start of the opponent's next turn. This change will still allow players to make plays with their pendulum monsters, but will disallow them from making a mockery of the extra deck and putting 2 to 4 extra deck monsters on the field as a result of summoning 4 to 5 monsters via pendulum summoning, in addition to any normal and special summon, greatly increasing the probability of making some super negation board. Second, apply the physical limitations of the extra deck to all cards, not just face-down cards. Basically, a player would only be allowed to have 15 cards in his or her extra deck, period. Therefore, if a player runs a pendulum-based deck, that player will have to leave some space in the extra deck for pendulum monster to be placed in it after they leave the field. If a pendulum monster is destroyed when 15 cards are in the extra deck, then that card would be sent to the graveyard instead. In this scenario, the player can make as many plays from his or her extra deck as desired, but due to the 15 card limitation, the total number of natural extra deck monster plays will be limited. Overall, I would prefer the second method because it would involve more intricate decision making regarding extra deck construction in the deck building process, as well as during the game itself. How big does a player go with the play? But I would be fine with either method to limit but not outright destroy the power of the pendulum mechanic. Finally, number 1. It may seem odd that there could be a bigger element demanding change in the game than the pendulum mechanic, but in my opinion there certainly is a greater problem. This is a particular element of the game that is inherently unfair and further impacts the luck aspect of the game even more so than pendulum summoning, in my opinion. It's the inherent XZ rank up. What is an inherent XZ rank up? It's the ability of an XZ monster to summon itself on the back of another XZ monster at no cost, i.e. probably the most common form of this in recent Yu-Gi-Oh! Play has been the summoning of a Cyber Dragon Infinity on top of a Cyber Dragon Nova. This mechanic makes no real sense, especially when it comes to fairness. The ability to summon a difficult-to-summon monster by summoning a much easier to summon monster instead, with no drawback or condition, is basically idiotic, because almost no one will ever summon the difficult to summon monster via its actual summoning mechanism. For example, when was the last time you saw anyone summon a Gaia Dragon with 2 level 7 monsters instead of any rank 5 or 6 XZ, or a Cyber Dragon Infinity with 3 level 6 light machines? When it comes out in the near future, do you think anyone will be summoning Utopia the Lightning, a potential 5,000 attack Armades with 3 level 5 light monsters? Or will it always be summoned via number 39 Utopia's inherent rank up mechanic, which requires only 2 level 4s, meaning that when your life points are around 3,000 or less, you always have to hope that your opponent doesn't rip one of those many existing cards that will allow him or her to set up a rank 4 summons, break out Utopia, rank up into Lightning, then win the game. Yeah, that's not really very fair. While luck will always be a significant part of Yu-Gi-Oh!, it should be the goal of any design to limit the influence of luck in order to maximize strategy and skill. If a player wants to go from one XZ monster to another XZ monster, it should require the use of a rank up spell card. Using rank up spell cards actually have costs and risks associated with them because you may draw it when it can't be activated, resulting in a dead draw, or not draw it at all when it's needed. Inherent rank up summoning has no drawbacks. Thus is, in my opinion, as stated numerous times already, grossly unfair. The faster this mechanic is eliminated from the game, the better the game will be overall. I realize this discussion did not cover all the issues that could be addressed to make the game better, but I feel I've made notes on 5 important points that should improve the game in some context, either directly or indirectly. Well, those are my opinions on this matter. Thank you for your attention and your time. I'm out.